5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
This is About Space, America's return to space. With news and information on the U.S. manned space program is your host of About Space, David Denault.
Even in space, it's all just geometry.
Welcome and thanks for joining me. America's space company privateers are building rockets to go to the moon and beyond. But finding your way through the cosmos may not be that easy. Ever used a sextant? More on navigating the cosmos next on About Space today. Don't think of taxes and accounting as being a problem. I use Hometown Tax and Accounting Services in Cartersville, Georgia, and for all of your financial needs with years of valuable experience, they deal with estate, trust, tax planning services, and be sure to like us on Facebook, Hometown Tax and Accounting in Cartersville, Georgia. Are you ready to fly away on a dream vacation? For cruises and all-inclusive resort vacations, call D&D Cruise and Tours at 877-747-8631. That's 877-747-8631. And see us on Facebook, D&D Cruise and Tours, where your dreams become a reality. Our early explorers constantly learned about navigating their way across the vast oceans. They learned about the winds, water currents, birds in flight, and of course the position of the sun, the moon, and the stars to be able to navigate to far-off lands. Well, as we develop these new spacecraft to take our astronauts to the moon and Mars, they will need instruments to navigate. And most Americans are unaware that the Apollo astronauts from the first trip around the moon used the ancient mariner's sextant. Here's Fraser Cain, publisher of Universe Today, with more on that story.
Spacecraft navigation is largely handled here on the ground. Radio dishes on Earth monitor the position and velocity of spacecraft and then upload commands if they need to maneuver themselves into a new orbit. But once you want to leave Earth, things get more complicated. For the Apollo missions to the moon, NASA developed the Apollo Guidance Computer. There's one in the command module, and the navigation for the mission was done from mission control on Earth. But as a backup, the astronauts used a space sextant to compare the positions of the stars to the horizons of the Earth and Moon to make sure the navigational calculations done from Earth were correct. It's amazing to think that the astronauts who flew to the moon used a similar navigation tool to what sailors here on Earth have been using for centuries. Even in space, it's all just geometry. Of course, your wristwatch is probably more powerful than the Apollo Guidance Computer.
Fraser Cain, publisher of Universe Today. Check it out. It's good stuff. So what if you don't have a wristwatch with GPS or a sextant handy? I suggest bringing along an astronomer to help you navigate using the stars. And joining me once again is Mark Banks, past president of the Atlanta Astronomy Club. Mark, so what's the first thing we should look for to help us navigate in the night sky if we're kind of confused or lost?
Well, if you're in the northern hemisphere, you can always look for Polaris, the North Star, to get your orientation.
And how do we find that?
Well, you have to be familiar with the constellations of old, the star patterns, to look around and find a recognizable star pattern that will lead you right back to the Polaris or the pole star. The Big Dipper, which is visible most of the year, is the best guide to look. The two stars that on the edge of the Big Dipper point directly at Polaris. Now, people think that Polaris is a really bright star, but it actually is about a fourth magnitude star. It's not that terribly bright. And in the Atlanta area, it's not that easy to see it, even after dark. But that would be the way to start, is find your orientation to which direction is north. And if you just happen to have the star charts that were created several hundred years ago that will tell you exactly when certain constellations rise and set on each day of the year, it gives you a good rough approximation of where you are in latitude and longitude.
Now, doesn't the Atlanta Astronomy Club have some sessions that you can actually take people who are interested in amateur astronomy that go out on the field with you?
Yes, we have several occasions where we've gone out and tried to teach people how to orient themselves at night. To this very day, U.S. military trains our people in, eyeball stellar navigation. And it's a critical part of our defense department training, because if a large solar flare or something of that nature wiped out most of the satellites in orbit, which is a possibility, the GPS system, the satellites, all of our electronic communications would be literally fried in space. And if that's the case, you still have to know where you're at. So if you go aboard any U.S. Navy ship, the officers in charge have all been to detailed training on stellar navigation, and they have the star charts handy. So if they need to, they can go with them. And as a matter of routine training, they do go out with their sextants on the ship, like in the old days, and sight the stars in, compare it to the charts, and to hone their skills so that if something did happen to the navigation systems, the GPS system, they can tell very close to where they are at on the globe at any given time. So,
Tell us one more time, the Atlanta Astronomy Club meets monthly where?
At Fernbank Science Center. And that's not the Fernbank Science Center and the Fernbank Museum of Natural History are close to one another, but they're not the same thing. So be sure it's the Science Center, not the Museum of Natural History. Completely different organization.
Our special guest has been Mark Banks, past president of the Atlanta Astronomy Club. And stand by for my special announcement.
50 years ago, we pioneered a path to the moon. The trail we blazed cut through the fictions of science and showed us all what was possible.
It's very pretty out here.
We're going.
We are going.
We are going.
We're going.
Are you going? To join us to be among the first to witness American astronauts, to be launched from American soil on American rockets from the Kennedy Space Center. We are taking reservations.
So continue to listen as America plans to land the first woman and next man on the moon. For launch details and more, see us on Facebook. And I'd like to hear from you about America's return to space. Email me at david@aboutspace.today. And be sure to share our programs with your family and friends. I'm David Denault, and this has been About Space Today.